Hello, friends. Today, we're embarking on a journey into the dark and eerie depths of the world. We invite you to a spine-chilling adventure filled with terrifying tales in the corridors of a hospital. Are you ready? Get ready to confront the ghosts of the past and uncover dark secrets. Get ready for this mystery-filled horror journey because supernatural experiences await you. In the dark and quiet night of the hospital corridors, Sarah was on her night shift, passing by the entrance of an old intensive care unit that was normally off-limits to patients. This abandoned area, deserted and forgotten for years, had become a place where horrifying legends circulated among the hospital staff. However, Sarah couldn't resist her curiosity and decided to venture into this abandoned area. At the end of the corridors, she found the entrance to the old intensive care unit, its door covered with rusty hinges. As the door opened silently, she stepped inside, greeted by a cold and dark atmosphere. It was a place covered in dust and forgotten over the years. Sarah could feel her heart pounding. She was filled with excitement and fear. Upon entering one of the old intensive care rooms, she felt the presence of the ghosts of the past. The walls still bore traces of patients and staff from years ago. However, as she further explored the room, she encountered a strange entity. She rubbed her eyes, but the entity was still there. It was something indistinct, like a silhouette, yet Sarah could feel that it was real. The room was engulfed in silence, with only the sound of Sarah's rapid breathing audible. Suddenly, she felt vibrations from one of the old monitors. A faint light illuminated the screen of the monitor, even though it had been shut down for years, showing as if a patient was being monitored. Sarah's heart was racing, as if it was about to leap out of her chest. She was filled with the desire to leave the room, but before she could understand what was happening around her, she turned her gaze to something else. In the corner of the room, a figure stood. Sarah pulled out her phone with trembling hands and directed the light towards the figure. However, as the light made contact with the figure, it suddenly disappeared. That moment, Sarah's screams of terror filled the corridors, but there was no response. Only silence and darkness confronted her. With trembling legs, Sarah left the room and started running down the corridor. When she reached the door, she stepped outside and was left breathless. As her duty ended, she quickly distanced herself from the quiet and dark corridors of the hospital. However, what she experienced that night would not be easy to forget. The dark and eerie experience in the old intensive care unit would forever haunt Sarah's mind. In the hospital corridors, the silence of the night prevailed. Nurse Jane was walking the halls on the night shift to check on the patients. However, she had begun to hear stories circulating about a strange phenomenon happening lately. Some staff claimed to have seen a ghostly figure in the hospital late at night. It was said that this figure was the ghost of a patient who had passed away in the hospital years ago. While Jane didn't quite believe in these stories, she started to feel that something wasn't right as she roamed the corridors on her night shift. Suddenly, she noticed a movement out of the corner of her eye. A faint glimmer of light coming from a room caught Jane's attention. Approaching with curiosity, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was empty. However, she still felt that something was off. Suddenly, she spotted a silhouette in the corner of the room. Under a faint light, an indistinct figure appeared. Jane thought this figure couldn't be real, but her instincts told her otherwise. She remembered the ghost stories that the hospital staff had told. Could this figure be the ghost rumored about? Jane cautiously took steps backward and began to swiftly retreat from the corridor. However, she felt like something was following her. She increased her pace, but the figure was still with her. Suddenly, she reached a room at the end of the corridor and rushed inside. She slammed the door shut and was out of breath. As she scanned the room with her eyes, she saw the figure standing in the corner, but this time, the figure was more distinct and real. Its eyes pierced through Jane's soul. Jane tremblingly pulled out her phone and directed the light towards the figure. However, when the light made contact with the figure, it suddenly disappeared. In that moment, Jane's terrified screams filled the corridors, but there was no response, only silence and darkness. That night, Jane experienced an encounter that would stay with her forever. Coming face to face with a ghostly presence in the hospital corridors was now a reality for her. In the hospital corridors, silence prevailed. Surgeon Dr. Michael, on the night shift, began preparations for an emergency surgery. However, that night, strange and eerie events began to unfold in the operating room. During the surgery, the team began to hear strange noises. Strange shadows moved on the walls, and lights flickered suddenly. Dr. Michael initially thought it was just nerves, but the concerned looks of the team members started to unsettle him. At one point, a team member claimed to have seen a presence in a corner of the operating room. Others dismissed it, saying it could be blurred consciousness. However, a sense of unease crept into everyone's hearts. As the operation progressed, strange events escalated. Surgical equipment started to malfunction unexpectedly, and objects moved on their own. Dr. Michael tried to focus on completing the surgery, but the room's atmosphere was increasingly engulfed in intense darkness. Suddenly, a team member reported hearing a violent growl like that of a demon. Others also claimed to hear similar strange sounds. The team was in a panic, and the surgery began to deviate from its normal course. Dr. Michael was aware of the tensy atmosphere in the room. The dark and eerie events could jeopardize the successful outcome of the operation. However, he didn't know how to deal with this strange and frightening experience. Suddenly, the lights in the operating room went out completely. In an instant, team members were struggling in the darkness, frantically searching for each other. Dr. Michael tried to find a way out, but the darkness and chaos engulfed him entirely. Eventually, until the lights came back on, team members were huddled together, breathless. Dr. Michael and his team would never forget this terrifying experience. The horrifying events in the hospital's operating room left a deep mark on the lives of the team members.